It's been another wild day in the markets, and we need to take a look at how things are shaping up. I am Dr. Stock, a doctor of education, and you know Oscar might be wild, but Gene is wilder. All right, we're going to take a look at three of the indices, the S&P. We're going to look at the Nasdaq 100 and the Russell 2000 stocks through the ETFs that track them. I'm going to give updates on Bitcoin, NVDA, and Tesla, and then I really want to focus on one bonus pick that I have that I talked about. I teased it in my morning's video, and I want to talk about it in detail at the end of this one. So let me put this up here. We'll start talking technicals, and I'll share that right out with you. So here we're looking at SPY, tracking the S&P 500. Let's zoom in into more recent price action to see what's going on. We actually got a candle up above the 50-period moving averages. That's a bullish thing. RSI, still at this point in time, we closed below 50. That's a bearish thing. We were not able to close up above this 5-period EMA. Not great for us, but we do have a lower bottom wick that as we came down, that the bears couldn't push it down below the moving averages, below this 542 line I've talked about in my previous videos as well. So when we're looking at SPY, we're sort of in all right shape so far. Big tech coming up, Fed coming up this week. Those are going to be absolutely huge catalysts. I'm going to keep putting that out there. When we look at the Qs, what does that look like for today? Well, let's zoom in a lot more. And I'll show you the hourly charts on these as well, because I think they're also worth looking at. We still are pretty much in a period of indecision. We're down below 50 for the RSI. That hasn't changed much for us. We are down below the 50-period moving averages. We haven't come up and bonked our head off that yet, but if we do and get rejected there, that could be a sign of a further sell. Well, if we look at the hourly charts for the S&P and for the Qs, we'll do the Qs first since we're here. What does that look like? Well, on an hourly basis, we're forming a bit of a bear channel and we're near the top of that. So if we blast out through the top of that, that could be a good thing, send us farther north. If we don't manage to get through that resistance at the top, we could be selling down further towards this trend line that's down here. And it looks very similar when you look at the hourly chart for SPY as well, that you have that same sort of look going on, that you still have that bearish channel kind of look. We're up against resistance. We need that RSI to keep on climbing, that price action pressure to keep pushing through that. Like I said, the Fed and big tech earnings, it's going to be in their hands as we watch this. So IWM, what happened with that today? Well, I told you that we had a mini rising wedge pattern inside this ascending triangle pattern. So in a bigger pattern, it looks pretty bullish. We could possibly break out to the top of that, break up to 234. Today, we fell out through the bottom of that rising wedge, which is a bearish reversal pattern. And you can see we ended up catching some support right around 220. So 220 going to be critical for us to hold on to that one. If we don't, then we're looking for this trend line down here across the bottom of this for that support for this ascending triangle pattern if we're going to stay in that direction. So the long plays could be taken off the bottom of this. Big tech and the Fed, especially the Fed, where the Russell 2000 stocks are concerned, Wednesday is going to be a major catalyst day, in my opinion. For those, big tech is also going to help it out as well. What's good for the goose is good for the gander here, in my opinion. So Bitcoin, what do we got? Man, we got a huge high top wick on here. We got a hard rejection off of 70,000 with $70,016 per BTC. And we came back down towards this trend line that you see coming down through here, where we have found historic support off that resistance off that trend line. We need to get back up over that if we're going to take another run at that 70,000. Moving over to Tesla. Check this out, 235 price target. What we get today? Let me see, go to this one. We got 234.27. It looks like we got within 73 cents of that price target. So that was awesome to see that ascending triangle pattern. That was in here. I've since gotten rid of that trend line, but it was across the bottom. I'll draw that back on there for you for the quick moment to see that play out. And so that was nice to watch that happen. This is the top of the ascending triangle right here. We broke through it today, and you got to see that happen. Hit this 50 period moving average, just a 4-hour chart that we're looking at, and got rejected there. We do have resistance right around 235. If we fail to break over that, we could be heading back down for Tesla's stock price. And like I said, for the Russell 2000 stocks, it's going to be a lot the same for what we see for Tesla as well. If we find out if it's going to be a bit of a party on, or if we're going to find out that we're going to get smushed back down. So we'll find more of that on Wednesday. 2:30 is what we're looking at. 2 o'clock for the Fed decision, 2:30 for Jerome Powell coming out and speaking. When we look at NVIDIA, rising wedge pattern, talked about it this morning, fell out through the bottom, so we had that breakout. I mentioned major resistance at 116. That's what we came up to, where we had that 50-period EMA. And what happened as we got near that red line for that 50-period EMA, you can see on your screen right here, we got a rejection right off the 50 EMA, selling back down this is in the hands of big tech earnings this week. That's where we find NVIDIA right now. If we find that we still have some green lights going, this thing's going to recover pretty well for us this week. It's going to be very volatile to watch, and selling down to 111. I mean, we're not far away from that 113-ish mark, like I said, down to 106, or we could see this thing back up to 140, depending on how this week goes between now and the earnings for NVIDIA, which are at the end of August. It's on the 28th of August, I believe, which is a Wednesday, and it's going to be in the after hours. It doesn't have the squiggles to say that it's approximated, so I'm guessing that's official. We're going to have to check out the investor relations page for NVIDIA to be certain of that. So for NVIDIA, watch for a further sell on this. Watch for it to come back down to about 106. If it breaks that, 96 is where you're going to find some pretty darn solid support on this thing, and getting down to the two-figure range. As this goes deeper into two figures, if it does, that's where, in my opinion, those buying opportunities come in. Not financial advice, but it's my opinion where you'll find me as a more of a major buyer of NVIDIA stock is down around there. And then you can also see down here, right about 82 or so on this daily chart. Maybe a little bit farther south of that, where you actually find this 200-day moving average is where we're going to find that next support. If 96 fails, the 200 is the next thing in line, in my opinion. All right, so Nike stock. Look at this drop that we had at their last earnings. This thing is just getting run through the mud. Found support right around $70 per share. And this is the bonus stock that I've been talking about, and I posted about it over at my Discord and also at the Stock Squad Discord. If you guys want to see my buys and sells, by the way, the link for the Patreon is down in the description. Click that, sign up, snag the Discord access, and that's where I post those buys and sells, and you can talk to me and my community members as well. So what do I like about Nike stock? Well, at this point in time, RSI is still down below 50, so that's something to pay attention to. And let me move this up here so we can see it. We have a rising RSI right here, so we have a building momentum on this thing. You can see that we've been consolidating with the price action. We haven't really been able to break above 75 too much and haven't been able to break down below 70, so we're getting this narrow range on this, lowering that volatility. If we put up the Bollinger Bands to see what that looks like, you can see they went massively wild for what we had back here, and then going back to being narrow again after those earnings, after that volatility. Now things are settling, and we could go sideways for quite a while here on the daily chart before it goes anywhere. However, it's when we start going out to the longer timelines that we start to see some interesting things. So first of all, Nike stock seems to move in $10 increments. So down here is 70, up above is 80, 90, 100, and down below that is where we find 50, 60, 40, all that, or 60, 50, 40 if I went in order, is what you see down below this thing. So we could be making a bear flag on this thing. It could be heading lower. We're going to have to see. I can tell you that anytime we've gotten down this far in the oversold territory for Nike stock, that's actually been something on a weekly basis that's been recovered pretty well from pretty consistently. So that's all the way down, and I smushed that down there. Let me see if I can adjust that so we can see it better. That is all the way down at about 18.26. It looks like that was actually a low, and this one is about 28. 18 is a different one. So the 28 that we have here, if we recover out of that, we could see significant upside. Trying out 75 again, which is where we find minor resistance. 80 is actually where we find more major resistance on this thing. So fairly oversold on the weekly, usually followed by a bit of a recovery that we see. So we could see this throughout the next quarter as we watch that price action continue. That's if $70 can hold as support. Now, when we go out to the monthly chart on this, now this is something that I had to correct because I thought I had the 200-period moving average because that's what I typically use. Well, I was looking at a stock that hasn't been trading for that long, so I lowered it down to how many months it has been traded for, and that number was 168. And so when I had it at 168, that gave a different view of the technicals, which is actually really exciting if it were the 200, but it's just not. So at 168, this is the touch that I had here that I thought was 200, but when I was looking at a different stock, switched over to Nike, I was like, oh my gosh, this is an incredible time on the monthly chart to come down to the 200 month when we've never touched it before. We've gotten close to it, but we've never actually gotten there. So if we were down at the 200 month, that would be an incredible time to see a bounce take place. Now, mind you, this is the 168 period moving average, which is just an arbitrary number that I was checking out for a different stock to see for the longest moving average that we could get on the monthly chart was 168 months. That's why I was using that one. So let me revert it back to 200 so you can see where that puts us. That actually puts us all the way down here at about $62 to $63 per share is what we're looking at. So if this does continue to sell down to that value, that would be a massively bullish time in my opinion. Again, these are my thoughts. You guys got to do your own due diligence and decide what to buy and sell for yourselves. But for this one, for Nike stock, even though it could drop further, we actually are getting down to levels that weren't seen since the pandemic, and then before that at the end of 2018 into 2019, and then we had a massive rally that followed for Nike. So what does Nike have going for it besides what we can see on the charts here? Actually, let me show you one more chart, then we'll get to some of the other information about Nike. So for Nike, for the first time, and this is typically a bearish thing to see us break down through the 50 period. This is the 3-month 50 of those 3 months, so 150 months total. That would be used in calculating this. Every candle is 3 months. Every one of them is a quarter, which means this candle right now that's being shaped up is July, August, and September. So this won't fully be formed until after this quarter closes, and then we'll really see where we are. And yes, we could close lower. We have broken down below the 50-day, but we don't have a full candle close. I'm sorry, the 50 period moving average on the 3-month chart. We won't have that until the quarter ends. So we'll see where that price action goes. So this is the first time since the 1980s when this thing goes as far back as my charting software goes that we actually crossed down below that value. So we're getting into a pretty bearish time, which leads me to believe that sentiment on Nike is actually starting to become pretty overall bearish as well. So we have a lot of technical reasons to see where we could potentially be getting those turnarounds coming. The same thing on the 200-month, by the way, the RSI also super low, and we're in pretty regular bearish territories per the quarterly chart, but the lowest that we've ever been on Nike stock. So I feel like we're getting towards rock bottom, towards sentiment on Nike. They do have a few things going for them. First of all, they're below the industry average of 23 for a PE. They're at a PE right now of 19, which is about the cheapest that they've ever traded, I think. So low PE, not something that would be super low. Below 15 is typically seen as where you start to find the value start to come into that. But they do have potentially an increased dividend coming up. They've increased dividends every year for the last 22 years. In September, they could announce another dividend increase from 37 cents per share up to 40 cents per share. So we'll see if they give that. That could be a very bullish thing. Also, they have an $18 billion share buyback plan. They've already bought back $9 billion worth of shares. They could buy back another $9 billion over the next 2 years to really help return to the shareholders, even though the company itself is really struggling with growth right now. And that's why we see the multiples trade as low as they are, as the stock pulling down as much as it is. So for Nike, I don't think it's a down and out company, but I do think it's a down for now company. And I think that's one that could be relatively safe and actually return with some pretty significant upside. So what do we have to look forward to from the downside from here? Well, from where it's currently trading, about 15% down is about where we could see it trading down over the next 3, 6, maybe 12 months. But that we do have potentially a 30%-ish upside. So that's a 2-to-1 reward, risk-to-reward ratio that we get as we look at what could potentially happen for Nike stock, and it is a dividend play on top of it. So complete loss, you actually have a good amount of safety protecting you against complete loss for something like this if it is one that you get into. And then you also have the dividend that goes along with it as well. Like I said, currently 37 cents per share, but based on their history of how they do their increases, it could be up to 40 cents per share. And like I said, they could also, especially if they need to bring something in to excite their shareholders, those share buybacks can be tapped at any point in time to announce that share buyback taking place. So that would be something that if they were to buy all $9 billion at once, that would be about 1/12 of all the outstanding shares. So for Nike, is one that has been very beat up for quite a while now. The last good quarter that it had, as we look at the charts, began in October of 2021, and then it's been straight down since then. And then it looks like October of 2022, we had a bit of a recovery. Hey, you know what? October of 2024 is coming up here. What's this one right here? October of 2023? It's starting to feel like a pattern, isn't it? So I don't know if we're going to reach rock bottom on sentiment here throughout this quarter, and in October is where we start to see that run up, if any, should happen to occur. But I do think that it's starting to get to be the right time to be bullish on Nike stock. You guys can let me know what you think down in the comments. Let me know what you think about any of the commentary that I've given, any catalyst that you think that I'm overlooking, any stock that I should be taking a look at. I'd absolutely love to hear from you. And also, guys, if you want to see my buys and sells and how I'm playing this market, there's a link for the Patreon down in the description. Click on that, sign up, jump on over to the Discord and see my buys and sells and talk to me and my community members. Also, while you're looking down there, snag that link for the technical analysis trading course so you can find out all about the bread recipe and options and a whole lot more that's over there. Small, easily digestible pieces and just tons of content. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. I really do appreciate it. I am Dr. Stock, Doctor of Education. Remember, my friends, that learning is earning, and we'll see you in the next video.